that we'd come full circle. It was actually kind of a 10-year period, the main thing. It was a surprisingly short time, really, I thought. But we started off in Liverpool, and we wanted to go and be famous, wanted to write a lot of songs and have a lot of success everywhere.
Just recently, a new headline dropped, stirring attention from across the globe and bringing back memories long forgotten.
How about this? It is a big birthday bash for a person who certainly deserves it, celebrating peace and love. The drummer of the Beatles, Ringo Starr.
It was news about three legends who have contributed significantly in the history of music: Paul McCartney, producer Paul Santo, and Ringo Starr. Everyone expected a new collaboration, but it was beyond it. The announcement revealed hidden stories about Ringo Starr and shocking things that happened to the remaining members of the Beatles. What was revealed about Ringo Starr? And why has it left everyone shocked? Join us as we unravel the shocking announcement, the core news, and the creative team. The world still stops when news involves the Beatles. Despite it being many years since they split up, the fascination around them never fades, and even so, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr have remained to make headlines whenever something new happens to them, or they make a move. Their continued friendship has remained an admirable one, almost feeling sacred. From when fame changed their lives, growing old, to losses, their bond has endured. It's not just nostalgia that connects them. Perhaps the mutual respect, shared history, and most importantly, music. And just recently, Paul McCartney and producer Paul Santo made an announcement that reignited that spark. It wasn't about a brand new album or a reunion tour. Instead, it was something more personal, about an already existing piece. They turned the spotlight back on a song that had quietly carried their magic, the album Standing Still. Standing Still is more than a song title. It is a quiet reflection of the core values Ringo has always stood for: peace, patience, and presence. The title itself feels poetic for two men who have lived through the wildest decades of fame and still remain calm at the center. It holds the meaning of staying grounded even when the world is rushing by. The song speaks also about finding balance, even when time keeps moving. Originally released in 2017 on Ringo's album Give More Love, the song has found new life. It was not just another track. It's a hidden gem that captures the soul of Ringo and Paul's lasting connection. Bringing back Standing Still to the spotlight brought attention once again to Ringo's solo work, and also to the creative chemistry that still connects Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney, and Paul Santo. Musical legends who bring something unique, each. The trio has been able to form a bridge between the Beatles' golden past and the modern, vibrant energy of rock and roll. But there's more than you think. Just keep watching. Ringo Starr is more than just the drummer. He's the rhythm that gave the Beatles their soul. His drumming was never about showing off. It was about feel, balance, and emotion. After the Beatles ended, many thought Ringo would fade quietly into history. But he didn't. He kept going. For many decades, Ringo toured across the world, wrote, recorded songs, and smiled his way through it all. His songs always carried one message: peace and love. It is his signature phrase, one he repeats to fans at every show, in every interview, and in every post. His solo career was full of positive vibes, was peaceful, and endlessly creative. At over 80 years old, he still tours with his all-star band made up of legends and friends who perform across the world, night after night, celebrating not just memories, but life itself. When you see Ringo on stage, you see a man doing what he loves most. His 2017 album titled Give More Love proved to everyone that his creativity hasn't dimmed. It was packed with warmth, fun, and sincerity. And among its standout tracks was Standing Still, was one of his standout tracks that got to the hearts of many. Then comes Paul McCartney. the man whose melodic instincts changed pop music forever. Paul McCartney's influence on Ringo's music has always been significant. While he did not play on Standing Still, he played the piano and provided backing vocals for songs like 6 O'Clock and Walk With You. Paul has also played the bass in some of Ringo's solo albums, bringing that unmistakable McCartney groove to the song. His bass lines went beyond supporting the rhythm. They tell a story, and even in his 80s, Paul McCartney continues to perform marathon concerts around the world, playing for hours without losing energy. When Paul and Ringo collaborate, it's never about fame or money. His collaboration with Ringo on Standing Still reminds the world that the brotherhood behind the Beatles was real and still reflects through their music. It's about friendship. It's about the love of making music together, the same way they did in their youth. Their friendship all began in Liverpool during the early 1960s. Paul was the young songwriter, and Ringo, the reliable drummer who joined the Beatles later and went on to become an essential member. Together, they created unique music in those days, and somehow, after all these years, they still find joy in creating songs together. Paul Santo, the third person in the creative trio, was a respected producer and a multi-instrumentalist. Even though he's not as famous as Ringo or McCartney, people who know him would confirm he enjoyed deep recognition in his career, working with some of the biggest names in rock, from Eric Clapton to Ozzy Osbourne and Ringo himself. In terms of his relation with Ringo, it is one based solely on trust. Even more importantly, he understood Ringo's sound. That clean, warm, classic, yet modern sound. Santo was good at bringing out Ringo's signature drumming and vocal warmth while giving a clean production that is still relevant to today's listeners. For Standing Still, Santo. But how did they manage to keep making music together, especially when their journey into the band was so hard? Stay tuned. The journey behind the music. Before the fame, before the fans, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr were just two boys from Liverpool. They didn't grow up rich or famous, but both grew up in working-class families, small homes, but big dreams. Paul was born in 1942. His father, Jim, was a trumpet player, while his mother, Mary, was a nurse. She died when Paul was just 14, and that loss shaped him. That was when music became his comfort. Ringo, on the other hand, was born in 1940. He was born Richard Starkey. As a child, he fell sick a lot of times, and at 6, he caught peritonitis, which led him to spending months in the hospital. Later, he got infected with tuberculosis and stayed in a sanatorium for 2 years. Due to his unstable health, he missed out of school a good number of times. But in those quiet and difficult times was when he found rhythm. From making drums out of biscuit tins to keeping time by tapping along to songs from the radio. They didn't know it yet, but while they were still on separate journeys, their paths were heading toward each other. In the 1950s, Liverpool was full of energy and music. American rock and roll had arrived, and everyone sure wanted to start a band. Paul had joined John Lennon's group known as the Quarrymen. In the band, they played small gigs, earning just a few pounds, and practiced in cold rooms with cheap guitars. Ringo was busy too. He joined local groups and slowly built a name as a steady drummer. His drumming was known not to be loud or showy, as many were. He played simple, but yet played it perfectly. People noticed his timing. By 1962, the Beatles had started recording, but they were in need of a better drummer. Their producer, George Martin, suggested a change because he didn't think their current drummer was playing good enough for the band. So Paul, John, and George Harrison reached out to Ringo. This was an opportunity he had been looking for, so he accepted. And that moment changed not just his life, but music history forever. Success came fast. Their first single, Love Me Do, was a hit. Then came Please Please Me, and everything exploded. The Beatles were everywhere. On the radio, TV, newspapers, and everyone was talking about them. Crowds followed them everywhere. It was difficult for them to walk down the street without chaos. Paul was the songwriter and perfectionist. Ringo was the anchor. His steady beat gave every song its heartbeat. He never lost his smile, even when the pressure grew. Life on tour was wild. Schedules were so busy that the band barely slept, playing from one city after another. Ringo later said, "It was madness." We lived on trains and planes. In 1966, they stopped touring. The decision to completely retire from live performances and touring sprung from numerous and complex reasons, primarily driven by the overwhelming phenomenon of Beatlemania. In the mid-1960s, there were no advanced sound systems for the volume of the massive arenas they were playing in. The screams of the fans were so loud that it was impossible for the band to hear their own music, or even each other. This made it hard for them to perform well. Because of this, they felt their live shows were becoming sloppy and below standard. Ringo Starr famously said, "The realization was really kicking in that nobody was listening." Another reason was the complexity of their music. With albums like Revolver, their songs contained complex overdubs and arrangements that were impossible to replicate with only 4 people on stage. Also, years of constant touring was beginning to take an extreme toll on them, leading to security issues and some dangerous experiences, notably incidents like in the Philippines tour and the backlash from John Lennon's famous comment in the US about being more popular than Jesus. After their final commercial concert on August 29, 1966, they turned to studio work, and magic followed. The change led to their most revolutionary and critically acclaimed albums. Paul pushed creative limits with his melodies, and Ringo gave the music soul with his rhythm. By 1970, it was over. The Beatles had broken up, and the 4 friends went their separate ways. Paul went into his farm in Scotland and began writing again. He formed Wings with his wife, Linda. Songs like Live and Let Die and Band on the Run made him one of the biggest stars of the 1970s. Ringo also found his way, released an album named after him in 1973, a surprise hit which included Photograph, which he co-wrote with George Harrison. The song hit #1 and proved Ringo was not just the drummer, but was an artist in his own right. Still, the breakup left scars. There were arguments, lawsuits, and years of silence. But deep down, the love remained. They had shared too much to stay apart forever. By the 1980s, Paul and Ringo began reconnecting. They appeared together at events. They called each other often and laughed about old memories. Ringo made cameo appearances in Paul's music videos, and Paul also played on Ringo's songs. It was like watching brothers grow old but still sharing the same jokes. In interviews, Paul McCartney has described Ringo as the best, and he has got a certain feel that is very difficult for other drummers to capture. Ringo Starr described his bond with Paul as, "Paul loves me as much as I love him. He's the brother I never had." They've also stood together in moments of loss. When John Lennon was killed in 1980, Ringo flew to New York to comfort Yoko Ono. Paul said it was one of the hardest days of his life. Years later, when George Harrison died in 2001, they came together again, not as stars, but as brothers saying goodbye. The 3 remaining Beatles had worked together before George's passing on the Beatles anthology in the 1990s. It brought them full circle. Even in their 80s, Paul and Ringo keep moving. They don't live in the past. They still perform, record, and celebrate life. Ringo's all-star band keeps touring. He picks musicians he admires and plays classics from his career and theirs. His message is always the same: peace and love. He says it at every concert, every birthday, every video message. Paul's energy is unmatched. He still performs long shows, sometimes 3 hours straight, and tells stories between songs. He smiles, dances, and plays like it's still 1964. Ringo and Paul's friendship is rare. After all these years of falling and rising together, their story isn't about fame anymore. It's about the endurance of two men who kept their hearts steady while the world moved too fast. From the hospitals of Liverpool to the stages of the world, their journey is one of strength and survival. It reminds everyone that the best music doesn't just come from talent, but from friendship. Their lives are living proof that even after the noise fades and the lights dim, the beat goes on. And for Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, that beat will never stop. But behind the calm smiles and timeless music, Ringo Starr's life has been far from peaceful, and some of it is hard to believe. Let's get into it. Ringo Starr, battles, healing, and new beginnings. Behind every smile, Ringo Starr hides a stormy past. He is known for his calm, peace-loving spirit. But his life has not always been peaceful. Behind the peace and love slogan lies pain, betrayal, and survival. Ringo's story is not just about music. It's about falling apart and rising again. It's about a man who faced heartbreak, addiction, and regret, and still found peace. Starting from his marriage that fell apart in the early 1970s. He had married Maureen Cox, a Liverpool girl who loved him before fame. They had 3 children together, and for years she stood by him through endless tours and wild nights. But yes, fame changes people. Life in the Beatles circle was intense, filled with temptation and blurred lines. On a certain day in 1974, Ringo came home to a nightmare. He found Maureen in bed with George Harrison, Ringo's own bandmate and friend. It was a shocking betrayal and a scandal the world never forgot. But Ringo's reaction to the betrayal surprised everyone. He did not explode with anger but simply walked away. That calmness was strange to many, but it showed how he was a man who didn't feed hate. Still, the wound ran deep, regardless, and soon after their marriage ended. It marked the end of his marriage to Maureen, and their family broke apart, with Ringo left to carry that scar for years. Although there's no clear information that says that George later asked for forgiveness, it was clear from the subsequent years, and even the tribute he paid to George's death over the years, that Ringo had forgiven him back then. That was Ringo, the peacemaker, even when hurt. But pain left its mark. He turned to the lifestyle that surrounded every rock star at the time: alcohol and drugs. The late 1970s were dark years for Ringo Starr. He drank heavily and was said to have taken drugs a lot. He partied endlessly, trying to fill the emptiness inside. The combination of alcohol and cocaine was a defining feature of his lifestyle during these years, impacting both his personal life and professional work. Not too long, and his friends and collaborators began to notice his erratic behavior and periods of heavy intoxication. Once he admitted that whole years of his life were a blur. What happened next will leave you in shock. After the split of the Beatles, Ringo's alcohol and cocaine use grew worse. He drank heavily throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s. By the mid-1980s, he was reportedly drinking a bottle of Mumm champagne for breakfast and going through as many as 16 bottles of wine a day. Then in 1978, he overdosed. It was a wake-up call, but that didn't stop his careless living. The fame, the pressure, and the loneliness continued to feed his addiction, and even as he worked with other artists, he was sinking. Even when he was performing well, Ringo later admitted he could not remember large stretches of time. Photographs from tours, concerts, and recording sessions exist, but he had little memory of them. The combination of alcohol and cocaine created long periods that were essentially a blur. His substance use also affected his personal life. He became isolated at times, spending hours drinking alone or partying late into the night. While still working on albums like Ringo IV, 1977, and Bad Boy, 1978. The process was made more difficult by his addictions. Despite these challenges, he kept performing, though the chaos of those years left a lasting mark on him. In 1981, Ringo got married to Barbara Bach, but by 1988, things reached rock bottom. He and his now second wife, actress Barbara Bach, were living in chaos. Barbara Bach also drank heavily, at times. Reports indicate that both she and Ringo struggled with alcohol during the 1980s. Their drinking habits were part of the chaotic lifestyle that marked Ringo's post-Beatles years, before he eventually entered rehab. They had met on the set of the movie Caveman and married in 1981. For a while, love gave them hope, but addiction poisoned everything. One night, drunk and furious, Ringo destroyed their house. When he saw Barbara bruised and terrified, something broke inside him. That was the night he knew enough was enough. They both checked into rehab. Even though it was the hardest decision of his life, it was the best. They rebuilt their marriage from scratch and found peace. Since 1989, Ringo has stayed sober and he never looked back. He often says that without Barbara, he might not be alive today. Their love became his second chance. Their bond is one of quiet strength. Today, they still live between Los Angeles and Monte Carlo, surrounded by art, friends, and memories. He also collaborates live. In 2023, he performed with Jack White at a festival. The crowd saw old and new music meet. It was proof that Ringo is still part of today's music scene. Fast forward to 2025. Ringo has turned 85, still looking young, always smiling and always flashing the peace sign. During his annual Peace and Love birthday event in Los Angeles, something strange happened. For the first time in decades, Ringo broke down publicly. He tearfully spoke about John Lennon and George Harrison, how he missed them every day and wished they were here. It reminded everyone that behind the jokes and sunglasses, Ringo still carries the weight of loss. Even at 85, Ringo isn't stopping. He still records. He still tours with his all-star band. In 2025, they performed in New York, Philadelphia, and Nashville. At his birthday celebration, he announced he had finished 2 new country albums and isn't planning to retire from making music. His 2025 album, Look Up, is full of warmth and optimism. That was Ringo. Fans love him for that. He refuses to fade away. His music remains simple, catchy, and filled with love. But fame comes with questions. In 2025, Ringo's name appeared again, this time in the Pandora Papers. Reports claimed he had 5 offshore trusts. Some said he was using them to reduce taxes. Others defended him, saying it was legal and common for artists of his level. Ringo didn't say much. His team only reminded fans of his long history of charity work. Over the years, he has donated millions to music education and children's causes. He also auctions his drum sets and personal items to raise funds. Still, the whispers remain. But Ringo keeps his peace, focusing on his music and family. Today, he is seen as a survivor. He has seen the best and worst of fame. He has buried friends, faced scandals, and conquered addiction. So when he says peace and love, it's not just a slogan. It's a personal vow. It's how he forgives the past and protects his future. His story reminds us that even legends fall. But real strength is in rising again. Ringo Starr's influence is everywhere. In the schools, studios, stages, and homes. Young musicians study him. Fans admire him and say his work is historical, but also current. After decades of fame, chaos, and creativity, what is it that truly keeps Ringo Starr moving forward? And what can we learn from a life spent chasing music, friendship? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You'll enjoy it.